you know, it's kind of been a bit of a roller coaster ride with trying to get funding for Water District 6. We had a USDA rural development offer several years ago during the ERA funding period. Rural development made some miscalculations on their available funding and withdrew that offer. We then, in 2011, scored high enough on the state drinking water revolving fund program list to qualify for funding through that. As we proceeded through the application process, they requested an income survey for that district to establish income levels and determine grant eligibility. The problem with what they were asking is we took income data from the residents in Water District 6 in 2011, and they compared that to income thresholds from the 2000 census. So they were comparing us to 11-year-old data with no inflation factor involved. So, I mean, those figures were flawed 25, 30% or better. So obviously we didn't make the threshold at that time due to that disparity in the years of the income data for comparison. So we, again, with this project, are one of the highest scoring projects on the funding list in New York State. So we were asked again this round to, complete the application for grant eligibility. Doing so, we are again doing another income survey for that. In the interim, in the past year, when we looked at the district and what we could do different, and if there's anything else we could make this project more affordable or feasible, there, of course, is some concerns from the town board about other districts with users outside of district boundaries. It came to our attention at that time that there were several outside users of water in the town on the west side of the village. Those properties were immediately adjacent to Water District 6. So it was then decided by the committee, and the board concurred, to then also include those in Water District 6. Part of the reason this came to our attention was it was actually the village of Cape Vincent presented us with a letter they received from DEC. DEC had taken notice of those outside users several years ago and advised the village that they do not have a permit from DEC to supply water to those people. And they said at that time that the town should form a district to encompass those people. That was several years ago. It came to our attention, like I said, more recently in the past year, and that's what led to the decision to include those properties. Because DEC at that time didn't threaten enforcement action, but they had then advised that this be done because the activities that were taking place are not covered by the current DEC water supply permit. So that's why that was done. And to address some of the other questions that came up, the income survey with the last income bracket being $150,000 plus, that is straight from the funding agency. We didn't make up the brackets, we didn't make up the questions, the forms, or anything. That came directly from the state funding agency, and that's exactly how they want the income survey performed.
Are they using an average or are they using a median?
They are asking, they will use the median.
If they're using a median, then it doesn't make any difference. As long as you have enough checks up at that 150,000 box, it doesn't make any difference. You're looking at a median, and median will be below 150,000. So if it was an average, that would have been a legitimate question. What about the 104 versus the 90?
Clayton Improvement Associates is performing the income survey. I'm not sure exactly how they came up with their numbering system to track that. Perhaps it was based on...
Yeah, I may be able to help you with that. The original district had 91 tax parcels. And when you expanded to include the properties on the west side of the village, it took it up over 91. That may be the reason.
I I mean, they also may be keeping track of, as you said, all parcels. Many of those, I shouldn't say many, but there are a good portion of those that are vacant. And the vacant ones actually do not get a survey. So there may be some people that do not have a dwelling on their property and therefore would not actually receive a survey. But perhaps in Clayton Improvement's numbering system, they had assigned numbers to those vacant parcels, even though a survey wouldn't be distributed for those.
I can help you out on that. I called Clayton Improvement, whatever it was, and spoke to them and asked them why they were numbered. And they said that they're numbered by parcel, and it is confidential, okay? And once they fabricated that, once they computed their scores, the identification gets thrown away. It has to be confidential. And in no way, nobody's gonna know what somebody makes. But they have to have them just so they know who they're missing and who they've got.
Correct, so they know who to follow
Yeah.
up with.
Right.
Once, once a survey is received, that number that is on it is never associated with a name again.
All right.
Some of the other questions, as far as the rates, initially there was just a flat, rate that was going to be applied, or a uniform rate throughout the district. Through this process and further discussion of including the existing users that we most recently added, there was a proposal then to create a two-tier rate structure to account for all those that had existing water but would not require new infrastructure. So a two-tier rate structure was then calculated, and what resulted of that would be a lower rate for those, again, that are already connected to a village water main directly. And just to give you a ballpark of what that would be, it's about $420 a year under the proposed rates for that lower tier. And that's assuming a home that uses about 150 gallons per day, 55,000 gallons per year, which is what we see typical of a single-family home with 1.5 children. So, but we've taken a lot of villages, a lot
So
of
that's
towns.
total cost including the water.
That's total cost, including 55,000 gallons of water. And when I looked at what the village rates for water are now for outside users, their quarterly fees plus usage above the minimums, a family using about the same amount of water is in the mid to upper 300s. I don't have those numbers exactly at hand, but it would be a fairly modest increase for that. To address the question about properties that are in the district that do not have water service, do not have a dwelling or anything on it that would consume water. The state requires that you charge all parcels something in the district. What the town has done traditionally with your districts is that a vacant parcel is only charged a quarter EDU charge. No usage and only a quarter EDU. If they get a curb stop when the water main goes through, but still don't have a complete connection, that's typically a half an EDU. So typically the EDU charge is about half the bill, and usage is about half, roughly. I mean, it's going to vary. So if somebody's getting a quarter EDU charge for a vacant parcel, it's roughly about an eighth of what someone would pay if they're using water throughout the year. And again, the state requires that you bill something, and that's what the town has done traditionally with other districts. Just one other thought I had concerning water districts. Just for clarification on this, just because I fielded questions outside of meetings from residents wondering why they don't have water on their road, and why it can't be here, and why it can't be there, and how come they got it and I didn't. Bottom line, most of these districts happen because the economics work. That's really what it boils down to. We did, at the request of the town, most recently, a town-wide water district study. To just do one last sweep of the town from an analysis standpoint of where is it even feasible? And we looked at every road, every trailer park area, everything. We looked at it throughout the town, and we went through the same exercise we do on every water study. We looked at what it would cost to construct water lines, to connect those places, and if funding was available at the levels we typically see, would it end up in a feasible user charge? And, you know, that number typically needs to be around $600 to $700 to $800 per year for it to be feasible. I mean, people typically don't want to pay much more than that for water. But most of the areas we looked at throughout the town would end up in user rates well in excess of $1,000 a year. Some of those areas calculated out to well over $2,000 per year. So that's really what it boils down to, is economics. You know, the funding programs are geared to address certain issues. If, you know, your project for your water district doesn't match well with that funding program in terms of what their priorities are for funding, you know, there's nothing you can really do about that. You know, we just continue to look for the best funding opportunities that are out there, try to find the best fit for each of your projects, whether it's an economic development type of activity, it's for development of infrastructure in rural areas, whether it's addressing existing public water supply issues. You know, we keep an eye on those because there's funding programs geared for those certain types of activities.
Matt, didn't you say the B and B were feasible?
There was, through that study, there was one area that had a user rate in the $700 to $800 per year if funding was available. We submitted a funding application for that, and as of now, it still ranks well below the funding line for that program. As Water District 6 did for a number of years, and it slowly creeped its way higher on the list as they started funding some of the projects that were higher on the list. So I think that's all we can do is keep our hat in the ring and keep our eye open for funding opportunities and hope to find one that fits.
Thank you very much.
Urban, I have one quick
I have a
question.
question. Excuse me, I have a question for Matt. Matt, would there be a possibility that you would be able to come back to Cape Vincent so we could have somewhat of a joint meeting, maybe a couple of people from the town board, the village board, yourself, and get the folks that are involved with this water district here, as well as anyone else that's interested, to discuss this, and that way they can be more informed, maybe have some maps here and things of that nature?
Absolutely. I mean, the more information and the accurate information, I mean, the better job we do of getting that out there, you know, the better decisions that the residents in the district can make to their best interest. So.
Thank you.
Okay,
Matt, is there any, as a village taxpayer, forget I own property outside, is there any cost to the village or to me for this water district 6?
No, in fact, the more users you add on to an existing water supply, the broader of a base of payers you have, which actually can help keep costs down. The economy of scale. I mean, it's the water produced by the village of Cape Vincent is about the cheapest I have seen anywhere in New York State because they are producing it on such a large scale. In rural areas in New York State, let me qualify that. For rural areas, when you have small villages that are producing water for, you know, a population of 500-600 people, it's hard to do that economically. But with the village of Cape Vincent producing water for so many different towns and villages from here to Watertown, they're able to do it at a very low cost. So this will just continue to broaden that user base.